today's episode, we are going to focus on a Bible story, kind of a lesser known Bible story, but it does involve Isaac and Abraham and Rebekah and their need for water and the need to drill, or I should say, dig more wells and resurrect some of their old wells. There's a famine going on in Genesis chapter 26. And again, we're trying to understand the Bible as far as it is translated correctly using the help of Bible scholars from different backgrounds. We've got Jono Vandor from Australia, a Messianic type believer as Christ, as the Messiah. We've got our Hebrew scholar Nehemiah Gordon, Dr. Gordon. We've got Keith Johnson, our Methodist minister, and LDS scholars, and a few insights from Papa John. I just find it very helpful to get a more rounded view of the scriptures instead of just living in my own echo chamber. And hopefully that benefits you as well as my children, my grandchildren, and eventually great grandchildren, extended family, and friends that I've met throughout life. Genesis chapter 26, and there was a famine in the land, besides the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. And Jehovah appeared unto him and said, Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell of thee. Sojourn in this land. And sojourn means live in this land, and I will be with you, and I will bless you for you and your seed. And I will give all these lands that I've established as an oath, which I swear to Abraham your father. So we have this reiteration of the oath, says Nehemiah Gordon. And I just like the fact that I'm beginning to understand, with the help of these scholars, that, well, at first I was wondering if King Abimelech is the same king, and I Googled that, and with the help of Google AI, basically this is probably the king following the original king Abimelech, either a son or the next king, and often or common practice, sometimes they would keep the same name. Verse 4, And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and I will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Verse 5, this is interesting. Our Hebrew scholar says, Why did I give you this oath? Why did I make this promise? How did Abraham become worthy of it? He says, Because Abraham obeyed my voice, and he kept my, and then there's this word, mishmartai, something like that. And that could be translated, he says, as he's kept my treasure, or something that to be guarded. And it could be my commandments, my statutes, my laws, my instructions, my Torah. And my instructions is an interesting word. That's the original word that we now interpret as commandments. God's not trying to control everything. He's giving us instructions for the best quality of life possible. And it took me a few years in my youth to realize commandments are not restrictive. They have the effect of freeing me and helping my life improve. Now, Jono Vandor, he says, Because Abraham obeyed my voice, number one, and kept my charge, that's number two. And there are actually 5 categories. He kept my voice, he kept my charge, he kept my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Clearly, there's some sort of code of conduct going on here. And our Hebrew scholar Nehemiah says, oh, yes, there's definitely a code of conduct. Absolutely. The question then becomes, what were these commandments, statutes, laws, and charge? What were those things? Well, we don't really know. Maybe it was everything that was later revealed to Moses. That's one opinion. The other opinion is, well, no, he gradually was revealing things because if he gave it all at once, it would be overwhelming to them. So those are 2 possibilities, and we don't really know the answer. It must be more than circumcision, because you wouldn't need 4 categories for circumcision. I'm glad to hear that. And, to me, it reminds me of that line upon line, concept of learning here a little, there a little, as it distills upon our minds and in our hearts. Verse 6, And Isaac dwelt in Gerar. And the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, Oh, she's my sister. For he feared to say, She is my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. Deja vu, right? I mean, didn't we go through this with Abraham and Sarai, who became Sarah? We twice this has happened with Abraham and Sarah, and here we go, deja vu. This time with Isaac and Rebekah. Verse 8, and it came to pass that when he had been there a long time, so he's lied to them about she's my sister, to, you know, but yeah, he's lived there now for some time. Uh, when he had been there a long time, verse 8, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out at a window, and he saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah, his wife. Well, sporting again is one of those polite words for the King James reader. But in Hebrew, that's back to that word, which I can't pronounce, mitzhak, or something like that. And it means, there's a sexual connotation to this, but they're husband and wife. So, verse 9, and Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, of a surety, she is thy wife. And how sayest thou, she is my sister? And Isaac said to him, because I said, lest I die for her. And Joseph Smith helps. I said it because I feared lest I die for her. That's the Joseph Smith translation. Jono in Australia then says, it's almost like he's saying, what are you doing? What is it with you guys? Come on, you're married to her. What is this you've done to us? One of the people might have lain with your wife and would have brought guilt on us, and so on and so forth. And so it goes again, father like son. I'm sure the new king Abimelech has heard the story from the previous king Abimelech. Verse 10, and Abimelech said, what is this thou hast done unto us? One of the people might lightly have lain with thy wife, and thou shouldest have brought guiltiness upon us. Verse 11, and Abimelech charged all his people, saying, he that toucheth this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. So now everyone knows they're husband and wife, and don't don't even think about it. Jonah Vandor adds, it happens twice with Abraham, and now father like son, and we have Isaac telling the guy, she's my sister, Rebecca's my sister, and it all sort of goes down in a very similar way. Nehemiah adds some insights that we would never get from another source. He was raised in Orthodox Judaism, has since joined the Karaite faith of Judaism. His father was, I think, the 30-something generation of Ashkenazi rabbis. He was being trained to be a rabbi. By age 3, he would spend his days in the park with a rabbi on the bench teaching him Hebrew. And he's a scholar in ancient manuscripts, worked on the Dead Sea Scrolls and such. And he says, and Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, looked out the window and saw, and behold, Isaac was, and there's that word again. And we translate it as playing around, but really it's not too technical, but you have something here called pail, which can often refer to uh, it's an iteration or a repeated action. So when it says he's playing around with Rivka, his wife. He understands immediately that this is his wife because you don't do that with a sister. We mentioned this previously in Genesis 21:9 when Ishmael was, and there was that word from Hebrew meaning playing around is how we interpret it. And in this verse, they interpret it as sporting. But back then, with Ishmael, when he was doing it to Isaac, with the sexual connotation and the abusive type of innuendo, the immediate reaction was from Sarah, you've got to get rid of this kid, send him away, which now we can understand why she had such a severe reaction and said, banish your child. This was a child doing something that must not be done. So if we learn a little bit, getting past the English words on the page, sometimes we don't like what we discover, but it's good to have a more thorough understanding of the storyline. In English, I often feel like it's just whitewashed. It's like you get a redacted, whitewashed, just the story in this basic form without some of the deeper understanding. Our Methodist minister says to the casual reader, it's as if Ishmael and Isaac are playing patty cake or Scrabble or something like that. Or the worst it could have been was he's roughhousing with him. But obviously there was more to it. Nehemiah Gordon says, well, when you teach this to children, that's the way you explain it to them. But when you're an adult, you understand the connotation here. And then he adds, remember, I remember reading this when I was a child, and I was probably like in the second grade, actually. They didn't tell us what it meant. But then when you get to Genesis chapter 38, there's a section as Tamur and Judah, which again, this subject comes up, and he talks about this is the word of God that's supposed to be read out to the entire people of children, and children can handle it. I think we should give them more credit, especially today's children who know more about it than we do, unfortunately. Uh, Jono Vandor says, hang on. If I understand correctly, it comes from the same root word as Satan, or in Hebrew, Hasatan. And my understanding is that it means accuser. So when it says quarreling, are they accusing? And we're getting ahead of the story, but this is they start fighting over water. So Papa John's scripture notes, I guess I need to reorganize them, but let's just continue. Nehemiah Gordon, no, actually here Satan does not mean accuser. That's a later understanding of the word. The literal meaning in Hebrew of Satan is enemy, and hence they often will translate it as adversary, because there's another word for enemy in Hebrew, but this one just means enemy. Uh, in the Bible, the Philistine king of Gath, Achish, talks about how David will be their Satan. He'll be their enemy. So just to help us understand in context what this is talking about. He continues, it talks about how God raised up a Satan for Solomon after he sinned, and it wasn't some demonic force, it was the king of Assyria, the Aramaic speaking king of Assyria. So you have these Satans throughout the Bible. In fact, one of the first ones is in Numbers chapter 22, where it says, the angel of Jehovah stood as a Satan against Balaam. Now, he wasn't a devil as we understand it, or as Christians understand it, I should say. The angel of Jehovah obviously wasn't a devil, but he was to Balaam, he was a Satan or an enemy. What that meant is that if Balaam did not follow the word of God, then this angel would be his enemy and would harm him or possibly lead him into other situations. The word Satan in various forms, and he gives us another one, Sitna, appears in Hebrew 35 times. It only appears 20 times in the King James Version of the Old Testament. There are 15 times that the word appears in Hebrew when it is not translated into Satan in the English. It's translated as enemy or adversary with a small a or a small e. If you don't know how to read Hebrew, you have no idea it's it, it's got anything to do with Satan, even though that's the word in Hebrew, but that would be a lowercase Satan. Satan means enemy in the Old Testament, and in the Tanakh, he is the enemy not of God, but he's the enemy of man. If we sin, it would be the enemy of God. Keith Johnson, in the English Bible, oftentimes we see the word adversary in the translation, and the word adversary could be translated in order to be consistent, and he was a Satan. So even our Methodist minister has had to figure this out over time. He continues, oftentimes people will look at the New Testament first, and then they'll take that and back translate that in the Tanakh. Linguistically, you can find Satan many times in the Tanakh, but instead, what you find, you could find it, but instead you'll often find the word adversary. Now let's continue. Verse 12. Then Isaac sowed in the land and received in the same year 100-fold, and Jehovah blessed him. And isn't that what God said he would do? Stay right here, and I will bless you. But then that causes some jealousy from the surrounding neighbors. And the man waxed great, the man being Isaac, and went forward and grew until he became very great. And he, again Isaac, had possession of flocks and possession of herds and great store of servants, and the Philistines envied him. But verse 15, for all the wells which his father's servants had digged in the days of Abraham, his father, the Philistines had stopped them. and filled them with earth. So they've sabotaged the wells. They're trying to, and that's what people do when they're jealous and they're not principled. So, verse 16, and Abimelech said unto Isaac, Go from us, for thou art much mightier than we. And Isaac departed thence and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar and dwelt there. And Isaac digged again the wells of water which they had digged in the days of Abraham his father. So he's resurrecting some wells from from Abraham back in the day before he was born. And then the verse had, if I hadn't interrupted, says, For the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham, and he called their names after the names by which his father had called them. So he's resurrected some wells, and he calls them after the name which his father had called them. And verse 19, and Isaac's servants digged in the valley and found there was a well of springing water. And the herdmen of Gerar did strive. Now we're going to figure out what that word strive means. They strived with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, The water is ours. And he called the name of the well Esek, because they strove with him. So our Hebrew scholar Nehemiah is going to give us some additional insights. I'm not saying this is what it means, but this is the symbolic understanding, Nehemiah says. There were 3 wells. Verse 20, it says, and he called the name of the well Esek. And it says, I can't do it. Okay, but in English it says, For they strove with him. And Esek means strife. Verse 22, and they digged another well and strove for that also. So again, there's this word strove in English. What does it mean? And Isaac, because of what they did against him and the well, he called the name of it Sitnah. Now, verse 21 that we just read, they dig, Nehemiah says, a second well, and he calls it Sitnah. And it doesn't say why he called it Sitnah, but if you knew Hebrew, it's obvious. Sitnah is like the same word as Satan. It means adversary or enemy. So Sitnah means enmity or adversary or adversity. So it's a play on enmity and adversity versus adversary or enemy. And again, that's lost to us in English. 22, and he removed from thence and digged another well, and for that they strove again, or no, they strove not. And he called the name of it Rehoboth. And he said, For now Jehovah hath made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. So this word, Nehemiah, what does it mean? And he tells us. Then finally he digs the 3rd well, and it's only the 3rd well that the enemies of Isaac don't come to fight with him over. Finally, with the 3rd well, he gets it right. Everything is happy, and it's called Rehoboth, or something similar. It says, because Jehovah broadened things, and we flourished in the land. So when in English it says made room for us, in Hebrew it was one word meaning broadened things. For now Jehovah has broadened us, and we have flourished in the land. The word for broaden is hershai. Oh my, I won't even try. And that's where you get the word, and I'm sorry, I can't help pronounce that either. Now next, I'm not saying this is what it means. I'm saying this is how it's been symbolically interpreted by Jews throughout the generations. So this is interesting. He's going to give us some traditions in Judaism about the interpretation for these verses. This refers to the 3 temples in Judaism. The first temple, the enemies of Israel came and destroyed. The second temple, the enemy came and they came and destroyed it also. And finally, the 3rd one, that's the one where Jehovah will broaden us. He's going to widen us, and we will flourish in the land. And all of Israel is looking forward to the 3rd temple and for this better experience. And I'm not opposed to that interpretation of those verses. I too look forward to the 3rd temple, or the tabernacle of David being brought forth from underground where it might be hidden. And so I'm looking forward to the day when there's a 3rd temple built, or the original tabernacle of David is set up again in Israel, because there's certain prophecies that we'll get into that will happen shortly after either one of those 2 things happen. In the end times. Verse 23, and he went up from thence to Beersheba, and Jehovah appeared unto him the same night and said, I am Elohim of Abraham thy father. Fear not, for I am with thee, and I will bless thee and multiply thy seed for my servant Abraham's sake. And he builded an altar there, he being Isaac, and called upon the name of Jehovah, and pitched his tent there, and there Isaac's servants digged a well. This is definitely a very arid climate that they live in. 26, and then Abimelech went to him from Gerar, and there's a Hebrew name. One of his friends came with the king, and another captain, chief captain of his army. Verse 27, Isaac said unto them, Wherefore come ye to me, seeing ye hate me, and have sent me away from you? So time has passed. They've had time to dig a well, probably get it settled, and here comes the king, who he moved away from, who had told them, you have to leave. What's going on, right? Verse 28, and they said, We saw certainly that Jehovah was with thee. And we said, Let there be now an oath betwixt us, even betwixt us and thee, and let us make a covenant with thee, that thou wilt do us no hurt. So we have not touched thee, and as we have done unto thee nothing but good, and have sent thee away in peace, thou art now blessed of Jehovah. So they want to piggyback on his blessings that he obviously gets from the true and living God. Verse 30, and he made them a feast, and they did eat and drink. And they rose up betimes in the morning and sware one to another. So they're making a covenant, they're making an oath. And Isaac sent them away, and they departed from him in peace. And it came to pass the same day that Isaac's servants came and told him concerning the well which he had digged. And he said, We have found water. So they're digging this third well. So I was wrong just a few minutes ago as I said they had time to dig a well and get settled. This is still in construction. And they hit water. And he called it Sheba. Therefore, the name of the city is Beersheba unto this day. And Esau was 40 years old. This whole chapter is ignored the children, Jacob and Esau. And here in verse 34, and Esau was 40 years old when he took to wife Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Bashemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. And verse 35 ends this chapter, which were a grief of mind unto Isaac and Rebekah. And that's it. Obviously, we're missing part of the understanding. Why are they grieved of mind? And to the average Christian reader, a Hittite, that just goes right over our head, in and out of our ears. What's the significance of that? It looks like he's taken two wives, Judith, daughter of the Hittite, and Bashemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. So he's taken two Hittite daughters. And I did a Google search, and it comes back real quickly. We live in such an amazing time. I would have had to ask a scholar. I would have had to buy a book, order a book, and within a matter of minutes, here's the answer. Isaac and Rebekah were deeply grieved by Esau's wife, Judith, because she was a Hittite, meaning she was a Canaanite. She was a Canaanite woman who worshipped foreign gods. This marriage violated the family obligation to marry within the covenant line and brought idolatrous heathen influences into the family, causing significant distress, bitterness of spirit to Isaac and Rebekah. And with that, we're going to close this episode. If you haven't yet asked for, email us at this email address if you'd like access to the actual Papa John's Scripture Notes project, which is ongoing and not even close to finished. I continue to add insights and footnotes as I continue to learn. And until next time, just continue to walk your faith walk with confidence. Learn to trust God like Abraham did, and like Isaac, and like Sarah and Rebecca. And I'll talk to you again soon.